Okay, we're ready.
Good evening. It's Monday, April 21st, 6:45. This is the Safety and Public Works Committee. We have 8 items on the agenda tonight, and we'll start out with item number 1. Anybody from the audience, if you got anything, just raise your hand, and we'll kind of go down the list here. Item number 1 is 122 First Avenue Northeast, and I'll let Jeff handle this, and this will be kind of an update.
Okay, this is a property at 122 First Avenue Northeast. Last fall, we had an agreement signed with the property owner to demo a hazardous structure on the property. Shortly after we came to that agreement, the fire department decided they would like to burn that as a practice fire. So they did, in fact, burn it. Then we recently resubmitted or re-requested proposals to complete the demolition following the fire. We did receive those proposals on Friday. The low proposal came from Deschantel, and I should have a dollar amount here.
$1,515.
Yeah, in the amount of $1,515. And with that, staff would recommend accepting that proposal for that demolition and cleanup.
And a little bit about what you do with how you guys get paid.
Basically, our expenses will be rolled into a special assessment. So within our agreement, we will be assessing that property owner for the cost of the demolition and the restoration over a period of 7 years at an interest rate that would be consistent with what our improvement project interest rates will be this fall.
Any questions out of committee? So the motion will be to accept Deschantel's experience bid in the amount of $1,515 and assess the property for 7 years. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 2, soapbox derby request.
Okay, we received a request from our new Park and Recreation Department coordinator, Katie Kaufman, with respect to the soapbox derby races, which have been held for the last 3 or 4 years over on 15th Avenue Northeast by Lum Park. And again, this year they're requesting to close that portion of 15th Avenue on, I believe it is 3 days. Those would be July 26th, August 23rd, and September 27th. This is, as I mentioned, the 3rd or 4th year that they've done this. They do an excellent job of notifying adjacent property owners and coordinating access with property owners during the event. We've had 0 complaints, so staff's recommendation is that that request be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3. This is a fun evening so far. 2014 microsurfacing project. Maybe you want to explain what that also entails.
Yes, microsurfacing is a relatively new process for correcting certain pavement distresses that we have in some of our streets. And instead of a chip seal where we put down a coat of oil and then put rock over the top of it and roll it, microsurfacing is a little bit more structural, if you will. It's actually put down with not quite a paver, but a machine similar to a paver. And typically it's applied in a couple of lifts. On Oak Street, the particular problem that we have is rutting between 6th and 19th Street. And by rutting, what that means is that the typical tire tracks where tires run on the road are slightly depressed. They're getting cupped a little bit. And what that causes then is moisture to be retained in those depressions. It becomes slippery. In the winter, they do tend to fail quicker, alligator crack, and eventually those pavements deteriorate more quickly than the rest of the roadway. So with the microsurfacing, basically it would be applied in 2 lifts. First, the ruts would be filled, and then the microsurfacing, a thin coat that's probably about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch thick, would be applied to the entire driving lanes. On Oak Street, we're only proposing to do the driving lanes. Then next year we would propose to come back with a chip seal on the parking lanes. On 4th Street, we are proposing to do the entire roadway from curb to curb. So Microsurfacing, it's the first time we've tried microsurfacing. Crow Wing County did some last year. We've been working with, Jesse's been working with Tom Woods from MnDOT, who is our state expert on pavement preservation and microsurfacing. So they've given us some assistance on our project. And they also plan to come up to take a look at it when we're doing it, so make sure that we're getting it done correctly. The question that we've come up with, and it was suggested by Tom, is that we consider allowing the contractor to do this as a nighttime operation. If we try to do it during our normal daily traffic with 9 to 10, 11,000 vehicles per day on the roadway, we're going to have to do actual lane closures and intersection closures throughout the day. We're going to end up detouring an awful lot of traffic on residential streets. And will, quite frankly, just delay or extend, I should say, the construction time period over several weeks in order to complete the project. However, if we allow the contractor some flexibility in terms of scheduling and allow nighttime operations, we can probably get this project knocked off in 3 or 4 nights. And even though it would be an inconvenience during those 3 or 4 nights, at least it would dramatically reduce the delays and all the other issues that we would have with traffic by trying to do this project during the daytime. So 2 things we would like this evening would be to try to get some direction from the committee and council on what the council is comfortable with for hours of operation, if we're comfortable with nighttime operations or at least some portion of a night, to try to provide that flexibility for the contractor. And then secondly, once we establish that, we would request approval of the project and authorization to advertise for bids.
Question I have would be that, would you want to run 2 separate bids on this to the contractors, so they would bid it for daytime and also bid it for night?
We've talked about that a little bit, and I think we would just leave it open to the contractor. Obviously, if they have to mobilize, and if they're going to be here for 2 weeks to do the project, that's going to be reflected in their cost, versus if they have the flexibility to do it as a nighttime operation, which seems to be the standard more so around the state now, as people are doing it at night. Then I think that's just going to be reflected in the unit prices. So I think if we give the contractors that flexibility, I think the little bid that we get will, I'm sure, be from the contractor who's going to utilize the flexibility to the greatest extent.
So your engineer's estimate, is that based on daytime operation or nighttime operation? Because it's going to be much less expensive.
My guess is, if unit prices, Jesse, probably came from nighttime operation projects, but okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's not going to reflect much difference there then. Now, there'll be some noise because you're...
there's some noise. It's trucks. It's there's a machine that will work its way down the street. The thing is, with nighttime operations, we could actually close down complete segments of roadway. Instead of just doing lane closures, we'll be able to close down, say, 2 to 3 block segments in their entirety and intersections in their entirety, and complete the work through the intersections, so that we can sort of incrementally work through the project and just close portions at a time.
What hours are nighttime operation hours? I mean, it's not the full night, or is it?
I think in some cases they could be, but I think we could, we could put some limits on that for the contractor, say from, I think when they did Washington Street, I noticed a lot of times they would start work probably at 7 or 8 in the evening and probably work till 3 or 4 in the morning.
Okay.
I remember when they did Washington Street, and there were some complaints from the Tyrol Hills area. They said it was pretty bad. But what I would suggest is that if we proceed with the nighttime, that we would have as a requirement with the contractor that they would have some neighborhood meetings. Invite all the people, maybe sections of it's quite a long stretch, so maybe, a third, and then a third, and then last third. And meet with the people and tell them, let the people discuss the hours. Maybe the contractor could be a little flexible on hours depending on what the people tell them, whether it's 7 in the evening or 9 in the evening, whatever. explain the pros and cons, and sometimes neighborhood meetings go a long, long way to alleviate problems and concerns. If people are part of the discussion, I think they feel better about it. So I would be willing to proceed as you suggest here, but I would definitely want a requirement that the successful contract hold neighborhood, because we're going to get some complaints if we do it at night. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We are.
Yes.
But you're going to cut down on those a lot if the contractor really makes an effort to visit with the people and talk about it. So I would support that. Is this, by the way, state aid or city fund?
No, this would be city funds.
Totally city fund.
The hiccup I have with the contractor doing it that way, and I can feel this as a contractor, Mary, just going, he's going to bid it for nighttime operations.
Right.
The people will tell him to do it during the day, but his bid is for nighttime.
But that's
We're
not
here to make that decision.
what I'm suggesting, Gary. I'm willing to go with the nighttime. I'm suggesting that we still meet with the people and explain it and see, are there any things, maybe the hours are flexible. Are there any things we can do to make this easier for you? What can we do?
We could host some sort of a public informational meeting and try to notify everybody, say within a block or so of Oak
Right.
Street, and
Right.
in case there's any, we could get some information out to them in terms of what the proposed schedule is. And
Right. Day or night, there's going to be an inconvenience. But if you look at 3 days or 3 nights as versus a couple of weeks, it's a pretty good trade-off, frankly. So,
Huge, yeah.
you know, but let's have the neighborhoods involved, because that goes a long ways toward making people feel a little better about it.
So we're going to, out of committee, we're
I'll go
going
with
with,
that.
so far, the nighttime, and then we're going to, in that motion would be to host public informational meetings.
Right.
Great idea.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to caution
No, I
was
hear you. I hear
the
you.
contractor
Right.
would get mixed signals
we
about what
don't.
his bid was supposed to be.
We don't want that.
Yeah, because he'll reflect it in his numbers
Sure.
then. And then the rest of the motion would just be to go ahead and you just send out for bids, and when are you going to plan on doing that?
I think the specs are, this is probably one of the last items we need to complete in the specs. I think we would have those back. I think we talked about in time to award the contract the first meeting in June, probably. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so the project's going to be done when? I mean, around 4th of July is a bad time.
Well, yes, we know that would be the bad time. We would leave it relatively open and probably have a completion date like September 1st or September
Okay,
15th,
okay.
just so, again, to allow the contractor the maximum amount of flexibility in scheduling within his schedule. So if he's already mobilizing into central Minnesota to do a project, he can
Yeah,
combine them.
Okay, makes sense. Well, then, everybody in favor? Aye.
Good.
Item number 4, the water tower repair grant options.
Want to take that?
Well, I'll start, and you can certainly chime in and help out where I make a mistake or don't give enough information or confusing information. As you know, the historic water tower is on the National Register of Historic Places. And you also know that the water tower is in need of repairs. It is leaking, has been leaking for quite a while. Being on the National Register of Historic Places enables that structure to be eligible for State Historic Preservation Office grant funds for the repair work. And coming into this meeting tonight, we had been telling the City Council that we were going to apply for a historic preservation grant to do the repair work, and that had to be due by May 2nd. As the the City Council packet was being prepared on Thursday, and we were writing memos and getting everything done, I got an email back from the State Historic Preservation Office that I had sent a few weeks ago, asking some questions about the structure, and those questions are outlined in memo option 2. That when we got that email back, it, meaning the State Historic Preservation Office, almost seemed to be suggesting that rather than applying for a grant for the repair at this time, that we might consider applying for a grant for architectural services to more fully explore the costs for repair of the structure. Tim Cahy, the building official, has received a quote for the repair work. It is difficult to provide a quote for a project like this because it's a unique project and working up there so high, and and we're working with a roof and leakage and an unusual structure. So the quote that we got, we're not real sure if it's going to be sufficient, which further led us to think, well, maybe we need to rethink our procedure and maybe think a little bit more about getting more detailed design work done and more thoroughly examine the cost for the repair work that needs to be done, which the architectural design services would do. And all that came together in about an hour before the planning or city council packet was being prepared. So, but we have submitted two options to the city council. We can still move ahead with option one, which would be to submit a grant for the repair work by May 2nd. If the council wants to do that, we would suggest that the amount be increased from the $99,000 quote that Tim got to more closely like $150,000. One of the things that would add a cost to that is we would suggest that the number of windows that are on the structure that should also be repaired, and which will add a considerable cost to the work. Plus, it would give more comfort to us knowing that we would be securing the necessary funds to get the job done if we went to a higher amount. And we can discuss what the appropriate higher amount is if we want to discuss the $150,000. But then the second option that we did provide the council is the option of foregoing the grant for repair now, but focusing on a grant for architectural services, which is due not May 2nd, but June 2nd. And we feel that grant would be $10,000 or less for the architectural design services that we would need. That is a no-match grant, so we would not have to provide any matching funds. However, grants are always looked more favorably if the local municipality or agency is willing to provide some funding towards the project, be it the repair work or the architectural design services. So we're in a position to do both, but as I said earlier, it almost seemed like the Historic Preservation Office might be nudging us a little bit to say, why don't you guys think about the design architectural services so you know more thoroughly what it's going to cost before you submit a grant for a number that you're not real confident in. So, if I've explained that thoroughly, I hope.
My questions was Brad Pearson is one that bought it, and I asked Jeff this today. I haven't seen or anything of where our access to this water tower is going to be through his structure that he has purchased. That he hasn't laid it out and said, okay, you got a 2-foot wide access, a 3-foot wide to do the repairs, to look at it. And, that part of it has been really, so where are we at with that?
We told him it's going to be through his personal office.
Pardon me?
We told him it's going to be through his personal office in the building. No,
Okay.
just kidding. Maybe Tim or Jeff.
Well, right now the access door to the water tower is in the chamber building. So, and it's not going to move. It's going to stay there. I think Tim had met with the architect that Brad's been talking to about some of the issues associated with that. But during with that, we do retain an easement for access to it. I don't believe anything is proposed to change with the door. But during the construction or the roofing project, we would, there's going to be construction workers that are going to have access, to the tower and to the stairs in the tower. Now, just how much material is actually going to be able to go through that office and go through that door and up to the top, my guess is not very much. It's either going to have to get lifted up there either through some very tall cranes or helicopter or something. So I think it's primarily going to be the movement of labor that's going to be going through the office. But yeah, that's just something that will have to happen during that process. The good news is at least it's going to be relatively short term. We think that once we get a roof on it, the necessity to get back up there is going to be reduced. So that should reduce further access requirements.
Any questions on the committee?
Well, I'm a little bit confused. Does the city actually own the water tower?
Yes, we own the land underneath the water tower. We own the physical description, I believe, is the water tower plus I think about 5 or 10 feet around the perimeter of it. Plus we've got easement to maintain the water tower that extends some distance outside of the diameter of the bowl.
So when someone is officing there, do they pay us?
Well, they own the rest of the parcel.
Oh, okay.
And so we just own the footprint of the tower, not the land underneath. Well, we probably own a little bit of the land underneath the building too, right where it connects to the water tower, and it probably wasn't the. I guess hindsight's always 20/20, but allowing the chamber to build directly up against that water tower probably was not the best decision that we've ever
And
made.
are our insurance companies all comfortable with this arrangement?
Probably not.
Jeez.
Well, the water tower won't burn; it's all concrete.
Pardon me?
But the water tower will not burn. So
right.
it's.
Well, I don't want to go through all this grant and then come back here and say, well, we got another problem. Now we can't get to the water tower, and I want that first. Define how you're going to get there and how you're going to do the construction before you go and order the construction so that we ain't got the cart in front of the horse.
Well, we could.
Brad is aware.
Yeah, Brad's aware of, I think, everything that's going on. We could certainly send the easement that we have down to our city attorney and ask him to take a look at it and see if he's comfortable with, that easement giving us the ability to do what's being proposed.
Fortunately, the plans that I was discussing with Brad's architects, it is the lobby entry. They actually are going to put a focus on the door that goes into the tower to kind of be the focus of that room. But it won't be going through any private offices.
Right.
But it will be going through their lobbies. And that, like Jeff said, would probably need more manpower. The rest materials would probably go up on the exterior.
Yeah, you got all your cleaning supplies and everything else going through to clean things up, but I'm just looking at an attorney that's going to have a clerical person sitting in that lobby, and then you go and award this out. And you're going to walk across the carpets and everything else.
That's exactly what's been happening now. When we have to get to the tower, we just go right through the chamber offices and into the tower we
chamber
go.
looks more forgiving. I can put it that way. Go ahead.
Where my confusion lies is when we talk about the roof. I know earlier we were talking about the dome that used to be up there, and I know we had some conversation about replacing that.
Right.
Because just plugging up the bottom of the bowl would only be a temporary fix.
Well, Jeff can talk and Tip can talk to the structural aspect of that from the historical perspective. At least in the photograph that is identified on the National Register of Historic Places, that photograph does not show the bowl. It had been removed,
domed, yep.
or the dome, excuse me,
Oh.
apparently had been removed before it was put on the National Register. Doing the architectural services route probably would give us more of an opportunity to be able to make sure that the state is going to be willing to accept that type of repair that would not have the bowl back on it.
Yep. Now, if I can mention too about the dome, the problem that we're having up there is with the rain, the driven rains that are saturating the walls of the brick on the walls of the bowl, then getting behind the brick and then coming down the exterior. So if we put a domed roof on it, we're going to be creating a situation where we're directing all that runoff right to where we don't want it, right in that interface, right to that brick. And then with that, we're just concerned that we're not going to be able to seal that properly or to continue to seal it and maintain a good seal at that interface. So instead of directing the water to the edge, we want to do something where we're directing the water away from the edge, collect it in the center through a drain pipe, and then dispose of the water.
If I may, two more things you should be aware of. If you choose to go with the architectural design services, and if we get funded, and then we apply for the grant to do the repair work, it pushes the project out another year. So we wouldn't be doing any repair work until 2016. If we apply for the grant to do the repair work by May 2nd, we'll be awarded this year, and we could start work in 2015. So there's that to think about. And regardless of what happens, it is very likely, historically, and even our logo identifies it, there are 3 flags up there that somebody has to physically go up there and put the flags up and take them down every year. Repair work and reconstruction of that very likely is going to mean the removal of, or looking at how we're, probably removal of those 3 flags, which is part of our logo, city logo.
Well, you mean that they could not be put back?
We wouldn't have any way to access them.
Right.
Tim, you want to come up and quick?
Just kind of make it quick. How we got to this point was originally the leak problem. So we were looking at bids to resurface the interior brick. The bid I got from High Tech was $140,000. We looked at and discussed it. For a cheaper amount, we could put a roof over it and permanently fix it. But the reason I felt a little uncomfortable with the $100,000 bid we got was that was a flat roof. I didn't know at the time if we were going to be required to do a dome or not, but a dome would not be in favor of fixing the leak. It'd be a bad design. So hopefully we can go with the flat roof, drain it to the middle. But with the roof, like Mark was saying, with that process, we're going to be eliminating having flags. I don't know how we would do that. We lower the flags and raise the flags from the bottom of the bowl. The flags are anchored on the inside top of the rim. We actually do the roping from the bottom of the bowl. So, and then we're going to be looking at penetrations through a roof, more problems for leaks.
But we could have flag poles beside it. They wouldn't be on the roof, but they could be beside it, and so the flag flies above the...
But the challenge in that, Mary, is how do we maintain and put the flags up and down?
You'd have a flagpole.
Oh, you mean on the ground?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And have a long enough one so the flag would fly above the... It wouldn't be quite the same
Oh,
effect.
you're saying on the whole length of the...
Oh, that's a long
It-
flagpole.
Yeah, it's 135 feet up to the top of the...
Yeah, is that not possible?
I don't think I've ever seen a flagpole that long.
And this
That's
is
all.
these are some issues that hopefully we go for the architecture engineering grant, and those maybe some issues that get resolved.
But let me ask you this, do you feel uncomfortable with what we've proposed so far to the point that now you think the architectural grant, if we get it, is preferable even though it puts us off a year, during which deterioration will escalate?
It's been leaking for quite some time. My concern is to get it, of course we want it as done as soon as we can.
Right.
But we want to do it right. But the roof situation is going to be a permanent fix. Trying to seal the inside is, to me, going to be temporary. We do a permanent fix, and that's going to say... The concern I have is if we let it go too long, that internal leak, we're going to start to see seepage and start to see the exterior. You're going to start to
Well,
see
that's
signs,
my
and that's
worry,
going to
too.
start peeling.
So that's why I'm wondering if you want to expedite it and get it done, or go for the architectural grant, which will clearly put it off a year at least.
I guess it all depends.
We've talked about it a little bit,
Yeah.
and we kind of thought that if a year or two difference isn't going to make an awful lot of difference, but it's probably more beneficial to have a better better understanding of exactly what the costs are going to be. If it's going to, if we do the architectural study and all of a sudden we find out it's not 140,000, it's 260,000, then at least we'll know how much of a grant we need to apply for.
If we get the architectural grant, then do we go through a process of hiring an architect?
Yes,
It would be an open process.
yes.
So you're suggesting number 3 here?
I think staff's recommendation on it would be to, I'm not really had 2 options, but rather to submit the application for architectural,
Item number 2.
for the architectural grant.
Would that in any way increase our chances of getting a better grant for the actual?
You know, we've talked about that. We think it might, since they are suggesting that we might want to go through the architectural process first. I think similar to like the Safe Routes to School process, successful projects are ones that use Safe Routes funding to go
That's what I
through,
understood.
to develop a plan. And so I, like other agencies, I think they kind of like this type of a process. So I think it would improve our chances of getting the actual grant.
Gives them more peace of mind.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so, again, my confusion was, what we're talking about is the difference between, not necessarily a dome, but a relatively flat roof, but in the same place, up
Right.
there towards the top. of
Towards the
wall.
top, yes.
And then it would direct the water down to where we want it.
Right.
Would that have substance enough that would secure flagpoles up there? Because you could still run the ropes through a small hole down to the bottom of the bowl.
Well, that's where the.
That's what we're trying to
that's what
avoid, is
we're-
the moisture
yeah.
inside the bowl.
Yep.
Oh, right.
You know, we can address the flag thing afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there'll be some good ideas come up.
Right.
Okay.
From the
Because the
architect.
flags are kind of a trade hallmark, I guess, of that whole that whole.
Mayor, you want to make the motion here?
Yes,
that-
yes.
What motion do you want, how do you want
That
it
would go
languaged?
for number 3, that we will apply for the grant for the architectural design, and
Is that under number 3, or is
I don't-
that just
apply for
No,
architecture.
just,
the paragraph?
Yeah, the paragraph.
Okay. so-
And do you have $1,000 in the construction fund? That would be 10%.
the construction fund is typically earmarked for roads and transportation projects.
Well, what have you got money for? We don't have any money. Where are you going to get if you want to?
1,000?
You tell me where it's coming from. It needs to come from your department, or Mark's.
Oh, for Marks.
Well, I mean, you know. come
Well,
on,
if
you
each
know.
of you guys
I have to buy
toss,
my own pencils and pens.
Well, I'm just wondering. I'm willing to go without offering them anything and see what they do. If you think, I'd be willing to try it. But if we have to say, well, put in a 10% match, we need to know where it's coming.
We'll send that over to P and F committee. We'll
Oh,
make the
jeez.
motion. That's what they're for.
Oh, they don't have a printing press. I think Jeff needs to look at his budget carefully and see where this could come from.
Okay, are you doing a match or not?
Yes, yeah, no, what do you got? Should I do a match? Should we do a match?
If we can find it, I would hate to have the resolution.
Contingent upon finding it.
Okay, that's a
Okay.
good way to put it. I'll make that motion.
and I'd second that.
Okay.
I'm glad he's the chair and comes up with all
We'll
these
submit,
good ideas.
and we will provide 10%.
Based on
Yeah.
contingent upon
Right.
finding the match,
Right.
and then we'll send that match over
Yeah,
to
by Jeff
P and
Halsey.
F.
By Jeff Halsey.
P and F committee. We'll find it, bring it back.
How did this
That's all they're doing now.
They got more money than I do.
They don't work half as hard
They're
as we
bean
do.
counting right now. That's what they do. They're the bean counters.
Well, if Jeff is any kind of an engineer, he got that much in small tools.
We can, well,
That's what Dave Reed used to do.
we
Well, we got to move along. We got
Oh, all
12
right.
minutes for
You're
4
right.
more items.
Oh, you're right.
Next item, Braun Intertech proposals.
Okay, we requested proposals from Braun Intertech to do the material sampling and testing on this summer's projects. Basically, we have 4 projects, and those 4 projects are in 2 separate proposal forms. The first proposal is for the material sampling and testing for the Safe Routes to School project. And in that particular project, we do have to follow the Minnesota Department of Transportation's schedule of material control. So they dictate exactly how many tests we need, how many companion samples we need. We need a lot of coordination with MnDOT for verification of procedures, and it's quite a lengthy process. But we did the proposal that Brian gave us for that particular project was in the amount of $11,536. Then we had projects that are all on a common proposal. The first one is improvements 1317, 1318, and 1402. That is Willow Street, 10th Avenue Northeast, and South 5th Street between Laurel and Front. That proposal came in the amount of $5,619. The second one was improvement 1319, which is the streets only, but around the Garfield School area it's not part of the Safe Routes project. It's a separate contract, but it's for the street work on 10th and 11th Avenues from J Street to L Street, and on J Street and L Street from 10th to 11th Avenues. That is in the amount of $7,258. And finally, the third one is improvement 1308, which is 28th Street. And obviously, this one we would only utilize if, in fact, we're moving forward with that project. But that came in at the amount of $6,204. Staff's recommendation would be to accept the proposal from Braun, or both proposals from Braun Intertech, and obviously with a notation that services on 28th Street would only be provided that project moves forward this year.
Okay.
Seems reasonable.
Do you get other bids, or is this the only bid that you get?
You know, typically we just work with Braun because they give us a discount off their normal rates for usually it's about a 15% discount.
Is it possible that we could, do a little shopping around?
We could. I'm not sure who else is really.
I'm talking about the next year project. Or,
Yeah.
Maybe we can do some shopping just.
We could shop around just to.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, our experience has been that we have done that in the past, and we'll send somebody a set of plans and say, okay, especially state aid projects where we'll send them a set of plans and say we need to follow the schedule of material control. So based on the quantities, we have them put together a proposal, how many tests are going to be required by the state, and how many samples, how many tests, and everything else. And typically when we've reviewed those proposals in the past, Braun Intertech always gets it right, based on the quantities. They know how many tests we're supposed to be taking. We've been unable to find anyone else that quite understands the schedule of material controls. So we get numbers all over the board in terms of the number of tests that they're proposing, the cost per test. So it may appear that some of them are a little bit cheaper, but they're not giving us what we need in terms of the testing.
Okay, thanks for that. So you want two motions or one motion to cover both projects?
We could just do one motion to cover both.
Okay.
I'll move.
All in favor? Item number 6, Buffalo Hills Lane discussion of.
Okay, we'll start running low on time here. Put together a little memo that provides some background information. Somebody is missing a sheet.
Well, how many sheets should there be? I got two.
Okay, here, let me trade you.
All right.
I don't know that we necessarily want to go through this all this evening. I wanted to provide some background information, and perhaps we can put this on our next agenda to have some more discussion about it. As mentioned earlier, we did start taking a look at the Buffalo Hills project back in 2004. The 2004-2005, we had a number of neighborhood meetings. They didn't really go anywhere. We went through a process where we tried to identify a scope. And quite frankly, what we heard from the neighborhood, at least from a lot of the Buffalo Hills neighborhood, is that they were fine with the way the road was. They didn't want to pay for it. And thought that, if we did any improvements to the road, they wouldn't really benefit from it. We did have some, a developer along the road that was very much interested in it, but they seem to be the lone voice. We talked about a variety of potential assessment methodologies, from assessing on a front footage basis to taking a look at the total number of lots and parcels within the subdivisions. Nothing really quite worked out there either.
What do you think about putting this one on the next agenda? Because we're down to 4 minutes.
Yes.
We've got 2 more items that we want to go over.
Certainly do that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that, because we ran out of time, but we'll go with item number 7, which is not on here. It'll be the intern update,
Updates.
real quick.
Real quick, interns, we've advertised for interns, engineering aid, code enforcement intern, GIS intern. Today, we're having interviews for the engineering aid intern. Today, we interviewed one. I guess the other interviews are Thursday and Friday, I believe. We are interviewing tomorrow for our code enforcement intern. And I believe the GIS intern, I don't believe that we've scheduled a date for that yet. And and they have not been scheduled yet for the street department. But street department, we typically bring those people on about June 1st. And the GIS intern isn't quite as time critical as the engineering and the code enforcement.
Item number 8, 1319, Garfield School sidewalk. Basically, we're going to adopt a resolution approving plans and specs and advertisement for bids.
Yes, that was, we did have that on our last agenda. At the last meeting, we did hold a public hearing to consider those improvements. We only had one person at the public hearing, and they asked about some other streets adjacent to the project. At that meeting, the council did adopt the resolution ordering the project and directing preparation of plans and specs, and the question came up whether or not to authorize advertisement for bids, and staff suggested that we hold off just to make sure that everything was going fine with the sidewalk project. Everything looks like it's going fine with that. The plans have been approved in the district, and they're down at the State Aid Central Office, or MnDOT Central Office. So at this point, staff would be recommending that we, council adopt a resolution approving the plans and authorizing the advertisement.
Sounds good. End of report.